What's going on, everyone? I hope you all are set for a very exciting week in the stock market. We're only 4 days in to the 2024 trading year, and it has definitely been a red start so far. But this week is going to be full of some pretty exciting events, and there's actually some pretty crazy news that happened over the weekend. So we do have a lot to talk about. In this video, we're going to catch you up on everything you need to know. We're going to go over some awesome setups for this week, and we're going to make this week a great one. So with that being said, Tom, let's get right into today's episode.
Yeah, Mike, and last week the market was pretty red overall, but on Friday it actually closed green a little bit, up 0.14%. Maybe we're starting to find a bit of a short-term bottom here around like 465, which is a pretty major support, and then now we're actually back above 468, pushing 470, so we'll have to see how the market can do this week. It was a bit choppy on like Thursday and Friday here as the market was just kind of chopping in this chop zone, but going into this week, Mike, there's a lot of fun stocks that we're going to be talking about, and one of my favorite ones is Boeing right now. Man, Boeing had a pretty good day on Friday, and if we actually go back over the past couple months, Boeing has been doing fantastic from the low to the high. This is pretty crazy, guys. Boeing is up like 51%. For such a crazy stock like them, that is a really good move to the upside. And Mike, there's some pretty bad news going on with Boeing here that might hurt them, along with hurting Alaskan Airlines as well.
Exactly. So some really crazy news came out over the weekend where basically there was this Alaskan Airlines flight and legit like a chunk of the airplane like came off of the plane mid-flight, and this is like crazy. You can see the video on the screen right here. Like, it wasn't the emergency door, like it was legit a part of the plane flew off while they were ascending into the air. Thankfully, there haven't been any injuries that I saw, but then the plane just, came right back down to the airport, and it's just crazy news. And while this is happening, the FAA grounded more than 170 Boeing 737 MAX planes as this happened. But it's crazy news, and it's sure not good for Boeing.
It's really not. I feel like that Boeing has a new problem with these 737 MAXs. Like every other month, there's some type of major problem. They should just discontinue them at this point, honestly, or just, rebrand it or come up with something new. I don't know. I mean, a lot of people are going to be freaked out by this, and obviously, it might be just a freak accident. Let's be honest. These airplanes are mechanical. Obviously, they don't fail a lot, but when they do, it's always pretty catastrophic. And these passengers are very lucky that they weren't at higher altitudes when this happened, or else that could have been pretty catastrophic. So, we're going to have to see Boeing on Monday, Mike, but I think it's going to end up opening down in the red quite a bit. And once we go look at the recent uptrend, it's actually been falling a little bit like as of last week with the overall market. So I'm curious if it'll actually start to fall under like this big like 244, 240 support. If we start to break under here, that could be a pretty bad thing to see. And also Alaskan Airlines is obviously involved. Ticker symbol ALK. They've been recovering up a little bit the past few months, but with that news, I mean, I would definitely expect them red, at least in pre-market.
Exactly. So either way, keep a close eye on ticker symbol ALK, and then probably even more importantly, ticker symbol BA, which is Boeing, as this news is pretty big and it's not good. So keep a close eye on that going forward. But heading into this week, Tom, or I should say the next couple weeks, there's also potential for another government shutdown, which, isn't necessarily the best for everything either.
It's really not. We keep talking about government shutdowns a lot over the past few years, and honestly, it feels like that it's just been very conflicted with politics lately, right? Like nobody can agree, and it seems like every single time they push it all the way, like right before the day before the shutdown, and then they finally make a deal or something. So I'm really curious if this one's going to go that far or not. Hopefully not, but they're saying that no fix is really in sight. And again, there's another big standoff between Republicans and Democrats, they're saying. So it's going to be a tight one, Mike. Hopefully they can, get a deal done. But as we know, Washington has not been the best with that. And sometimes it causes some volatility in the stock market. And let's say a deal doesn't get done. Oh man, Mike, I mean, we're going to see a lot of negativity like we've seen in the past. Even if it starts to push the date, it starts to cause that fear, which could be good in some cases. Like we might see gold and silver start to do a little bit better. But in the overall sense of things, it's definitely pretty negative.
Exactly. And this week will be especially exciting because we also have crucial inflation data set to release on Thursday, 1 hour before the market opens. As we all know, inflation data has been some of the most important economic data over the past couple of years, as inflation has been all over the place. But basically, on Thursday, the inflation rate is expected to come in around like 3.2 to 3.3%. And Tom, that isn't necessarily the best sign, as the last inflation reading came in at 3.1%. So it is creeping up a little bit.
It is, and they're expecting a small increase there. And imagine if that increase actually ends up coming in a little bit higher than people think. And I think it actually might, Mike, given how the market popped up so much and the way the US 10Y and just the treasuries have kind of been coming back down. That's been really interesting here. So I'm going to really keep my eyes on this inflation rate. It's going to be a big thing on Thursday, 1 hour before the market opens. Then Friday, we have PPI data as well. But the big thing is going to be Friday. And then there's even initial jobless claims Friday, too. So we're going to get a plethora of data 1 hour before the market opens. Be ready there, guys. And then, Mike, transitioning into earnings, there's even a few of our favorites on here. Like, we talk about Tilray all the time. And then on Friday, there's actually a ton of banks reporting. So let's go. I think my favorite one of the week will probably be Citigroup with the banks, just given their big run lately, but Tilray's definitely interesting as well.
Guys, just so you know, whenever you see the bank stocks start to report, like this Friday, that signifies like the start of earnings season. So pretty soon we'll start to see more of those bigger and exciting earnings releases come out. But even the bank stocks are pretty exciting at times as well, because sometimes they have some pretty big moves. And then, like you said, Tom, Tilray on Tuesday before market open, that marijuana company can also have some really big moves from time to time. And heading into the 2024 elections, I wouldn't be surprised if the marijuana industry had a little bit extra volatility than normal.
Yeah, and Tilray has done a lot. They've tried to increase revenues by purchasing beer brands from AB InBev and doing a lot of things to try to help that revenue. So hopefully they can report some good revenue numbers for once. It's been rough for these MJ companies out there. But yeah, let's go, Mike. Those banks are going to be fun. And, looking at the banks, they are extremely high in the short term. They better have some good reports or else it could be pullback time.
Alrighty, and then another thing we have to talk about is the situation at hand with the overall market. So literally, the market was basically at 52-week highs, and then since that point, it has been red over like the past 4 trading days, since 2024 has begun. And we could see that over time, this setup has actually happened more than you would otherwise think. Every single red dot on this chart of the S&P 500 going all the way back to the year 2000 shows, the situation that we currently have right now. It shows it on the chart historically, which I thought was pretty interesting, because a lot of people look at the market right now and they're like, how is it even possible that, you can just be basically right at highs and then you're just selling off, so quickly afterwards. But it's interesting.
Yeah, and a lot of times the market keeps going higher, right? But, dips are common in the market. And whenever you see markets run up like they have lately, like I have the SPY on an hourly chart right now, going back to the beginning of November, just to show this little uptrend here. I mean, that is an insane move. And then whenever you zoom out further and you go back to like March, or you go to a daily and you go out to like the beginning of the year, I mean, you're just talking about, and when I say the beginning of the year, I meant in 2023, of course, just the way that the market moved up was pretty insane, right? You have to expect dips to come in, and to see 4 red days is fairly rare, but it's interesting to look at the chart to see that it does happen fairly often. And, the market does keep going a lot after, a short-term dip like this, but, these things take time. This chart is like 24 years long, so, keep that in mind too. Like, it's not like this is like only like 5 years worth of data or something. It's quite a bit, actually, and look at how many has happened. But there is like periods of like 6 months to even years between some of these dots, though.
What I think is really interesting about this is that, generally speaking, there's like 2 possible outcomes. Like, the most common outcome is that the market, keeps marching higher, kind of like what you were saying. But there have been like a handful of situations where you see like a red dot on the chart and like the market ends up pulling back in like a pretty decent way. Like, we could see the second most recent red dot was, I think that, what is that, like 2023 dot right there, and the market pulled back a decent amount. You had another one like at the end of 2021. You had one right before the COVID crash. You had one in like 2019, and then there was a big dip there. You had another one in like 2011 or 2012, and there was a decent dip there. So I feel like it's either going to like slowly drift higher, or it's like if it pulls back, like, it'll be like a decent sized pullback.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm honestly kind of on the side of pullback right now, just kind of given, market conditions and the way the markets ran up and the way that we're sitting like right at all-time highs as well. Like, it's almost forming a perfect double top right now, which it could break, but we'll have to see how the market does here over the next few months. But I'm definitely going to keep this on watch, Mike, because it's so interesting looking at the data on the overall market right now, because everybody's really conflicted, right? Like, the bulls are looking for all-time highs, and obviously the bears are looking for rejections, and I feel like there's like a huge war going on up here at these huge levels.
Exactly. Well, with that being said, let's get right into some setups for tomorrow. One stock I'm watching very closely is MSOS. So for those of you who don't know, this stock is basically an ETF full of a bunch of US-based cannabis companies, and it has been on the rise a good amount, basically ever since the end of August, which is great. But even, more short term, it has been running up pretty strongly over like the past couple weeks or so, given like the, I guess you could say just some increased hype in 2024 and the elections, and, a handful of good recent news as well. But either way, it's starting to move with some pretty good momentum. The key thing with these setups is volume. You want to see that volume like rushing into this stock. You want to see like a lot of money flowing into it, because when you do see that in the past through all setups with MSOS, Tilray, CGC, and all the other cannabis-based companies, when they have the money flowing into them, they pop in a huge way. But when like the capital really isn't flowing in that strongly, then they just fade lower. So like the key thing is like the volume and momentum with this one. And if we see that volume and momentum like we've been seeing over the past couple of days, it definitely has room to run.
Yeah, it does. MSOS has been really fun to watch, Mike, and you've been calling it out nonstop. So I gotta, give you some credit on that one. These stocks have been starting to really run, and they've had some good news associated. So love to see it, Mike. I'm sad though, because my favorite Tilray's not been doing anything. But hey, at least MSOS has been fire. With my first play, I'm going with Delta Airlines, and I'll say this. Delta Airlines has earnings this week, but what I'm looking for, Mike, is a play on Monday specifically to the downside, just with continued negativity with the airlines, right? If we see Boeing and Alaska Airlines tank down, I would bet you that some of the others will fall down as well, and I think Delta might be a little bit better to play. We might not see like as large of an initial drop, and the premiums might not be like as crazy, and the volatility might not be as crazy too. So I'm just going to look for like a nice continuation play, or a nice, play following that Boeing move down and Alaska Airlines. So watch Delta to the downside, and also keep your eyes on Boeing. I got to mention that one too. I'm definitely going to be watching options on this one tomorrow. If it has like a big continuation down after the pre-market move, then obviously there's going to be some potential.
Exactly. All right, another stock I'm watching pretty closely is Netflix, and it's to the downside. This thing has been blasting over the past year, and it's kind of about that time where it's starting to pull back, especially as it just got rejected big time off that $500 resistance. So for Netflix, I would love to see like it get back to that 468.50 area and just like break below that, and then I would love to trade it to the downside. When this one moves with some momentum, like it's normally pretty good. Either way, I am watching this one in a bearish way. It's just a little bit too overextended, and the like short-term momentum's finally starting to turn to the downside.
Man, Mike, I'll say this, it almost even looks like a dead cat bounce with like the way it's been holding this like little trend line here on these wicks, and it's starting to reject here at the top. If it starts to break down under here, that could be a fun play next week. So I'm definitely going to keep Netflix on the radar. I actually like it so much, I'm going to like make a little alert down here right around like 468.50 so that I can be notified, of course. But with my next play, I'm going with Pfizer, and I'm actually looking at this one to the upside for a little recovery. They were doing great over the past like month or so, and they started to dip back down a little last week. I'm going to look for some of these healthcare stocks to kind of go against the market and come back up. Like if that SPY falls, Pfizer could have a mind of its own. So I'm going to keep watching these healthcare stocks. They've had some increased volatility lately, and I'm really watching this recent dip as like a good area to buy it up off of.
Perfect. Alrighty, well, let's get right into the momentum plays for tomorrow. And with the first one, we have a pretty crazy stock, Peloton, to the upside. And guys, don't forget, last week this stock had a pretty big deal with TikTok, which totally reversed the momentum of this one, because on Wednesday, January 3rd, this thing was just kind of like down in the dumps. But once that deal came out on Thursday, it started to turn on the jets, and it's been moving in a pretty good way.
Yeah, it's been awesome, and it actually, last week on Friday, started falling down a little bit, which is good. We might be able to buy this off some good supports here. I'm going to watch this 650 support, and if it breaks back above like 680 intraday, I think there could be a good opportunity up to 7 or even higher. So watch for that 680 break, and then try to follow that momentum.
Alrighty, with the next one, we have Google with an L to the downside.
Yeah, poor Google here. They were rough last week, Mike. That was one of the nastier stocks on Friday, just down in the dumps overall. If they fall under that 135.20 low of day there, then go ahead and look at puts.
All right, and then with the last one, we have the mysterious TLT for both directions.
The mysterious. That was awesome. But if TLT falls under 95.85, go ahead and look at some puts. But hey, if it ends up bouncing here and moving back up, go ahead and look for them to break back above 96.50. I think that's a pretty nice intraday resistance there. So 96.50 to the upside and 95.80 to the downside.
All right, well, you guys heard Tom. We have the downside level. If it breaks below it, we're watching it down. We have the upside level for an upside play, and then that's for TLT. Don't forget about Google with the downside level there, and then Peloton with the upside level there. I know I say this all the time, but if these stocks don't break the levels Tom listed, then find a new setup and don't force a bad trade. But yeah, these are momentum plays. Only play them if they break the levels listed. And with that being said, it is now about that time for today's $725,000 trade of the day. And we are looking at ticker symbol WOLF. So this situation, basically on Friday, 725 grand was put into the Wolf 50 strike call options, and these things expire way out, all the way out to January 16th of 2026. And what you'll notice, Tom, I need you to go to like a long-term chart, like max weekly, max monthly, something far out. You will see that this thing has some giant swings over the years, like hundreds of %, and it is towards like that lower range that it is normally at. So I think the big money's looking at this, and they're like, you know, this stock has a 25-year history of some giant swings, and, you know, if I can scoop up the 50 strike calls that expire a couple years out and, you know, have like a decent risk reward to them, it's not like a bad setup overall. So overall, you know, like I was saying, it's not a bad setup, but this is one of those trades where it's like, if you're going to take it, like, you need to give it the time it has, because if you think you're going to day trade this one, it's just like, it's not even like the actual setup, but very interesting nonetheless. And Tom, we don't see too many setups that go this far out in time.
Yeah, we don't, and I'm glad that you told me to go out to this weekly chart, because it's actually bouncing off a good trend line. You know, people know I love to trade off those trend lines quite a bit, and it's good to see it holding support at 30. And yeah, if it keeps holding here, Mike, this could be a great play out to 2026. Like you said, you obviously need to give it time, but like, look at some of these moves up. Like, some of these moves, guys, have lasted for like a year straight. Like the 2020 recovery up to like 2022 was like 2 straight years of movement here. So keep in mind, like, if they start to bounce up here, you know, it might take like 2 straight years, but it might get pretty high as we head into 2026. So I really like this, Mike. I even like that that's the 50 strike calls being a little bit out of the money, you know. It gives you maybe a little bit, I guess, what would I say? It's a little bit more fun, right? You might make a little bit higher of a percentage on it, right? But, you know, you could go a little safer if you wanted to as well. And honestly, it even seems like a decent share setup if you maybe didn't, you know, want to hold the options that long or something along those lines. But I love the setup overall, and that trend line looks awesome.
Absolutely, but it should be a pretty exciting week, Tom, between the inflation data on Thursday, the recent news with Peloton from last week, the market overall, the start of earnings season coming back up. There's a lot going on, so it should be pretty exciting. And one thing I've noticed so far this year is that the opportunity with individual stocks has been a lot greater than the opportunity with the market, because when you go to, like, let's say an intraday chart of SPY, like, the movement has been fine, but I wouldn't necessarily say the movement has been good. It's been kind of choppy intraday on SPY, whereas when you go to, like, individual stocks like Peloton or some of these weed stocks or Boeing or some of these big tech stocks, like, they're just moving better. So, like, I think going into this week, it'll be a lot better to just, like, focus on individual stocks and individual situations rather than trying to trade the SPY, because the SPY is kind of like, I don't know what you want me to do right now. We're starting to see some big tech stocks start to pull back. We have bank stocks running like like none other, and it's just like very like messy, So keep that in mind going forward, but I think it should be a very good week.
Yeah, I think so too, Mike. And one thing that we didn't mention just to keep on the radar is that don't forget about the Bitcoin ETF. A lot of people are maybe looking for that to be approved maybe sometime this week. I'm sure we'll see some type of news with it. So I bet you will be hitting on this one later in the week, guys. So make sure you're tuning in as the week goes. But yeah, let's go, Mike. Let's make it a great week. I think we have a lot of great plays here setting up for tomorrow. I really like that Netflix play to the downside. I think that one's looking awesome, like if 470 and 468.50 breaks, like you mentioned, it'll be a really fun setup. So, take some of these setups, guys, set some alerts like I did here, and, take advantage of these, because some of these end up being pretty good sometimes.
Yeah, and every single day we talk about the best setups, the most important news, some interesting charts that you wouldn't otherwise see. So make sure to subscribe so you see our videos recommended to you more often. We post all the time. And then last but not least, I want to give a giant shout out to today's member of the day, Jamie in the StockedUp Discord. You've been a great member of the community for a long time now, and you're very active and just a great member all around. So huge shout out to you. And besides that, guys, let's have an amazing week in the markets.